A man in a bunny suit wielding an axe in the Virginia woods. A hook-handed monster stealing children in New York. A cursed house in Tasmania that drives its inhabitants insane. We usually dismiss these stories as fake. They sound like the kind of campfire tales cooked up by bored teenagers, or tall tales invented by overprotective parents to keep their kids from wandering too far from home. But consider an alternative. What if these aren't lies? What if they are actual historical records, slowly obscured by decades of the telephone game? Folklore is reality wearing a mask, and when you strip away the supernatural elements, the true events hidden behind these myths are often much darker than the stories themselves. Take the inner city suburb of West Hobart in Tasmania, Australia. For years, locals avoided one specific home because of terrifying rumors that it was so severely haunted, it drove an entire family completely insane. When authorities finally investigated, they found the family was indeed suffering from severe delirium. It had nothing to do with ghosts. It was an ongoing case of environmental poisoning. This diagram shows exactly how it happened. A datura vine had overgrown the house, dropping leaves directly into the family's rainwater tank. Datura is a highly toxic, hallucinogenic plant, historically used in voodoo zombification rituals. Because the water was contaminated, the family inadvertently consumed microdoses every day. The steady accumulation of toxins caused a slow descent into delirium. When humans face a terrifying environmental anomaly they cannot scientifically explain, the brain's defense mechanism is to invent the supernatural. This pattern of invention extends to the deep woods. In Maine, locals whispered about the invisible North Pond hermit who robbed cabins at night. In Switzerland, people reported a creeping 6-foot-tall ghost in a vintage gas mask, known as Le Loyan. The invisible phantom of Maine was actually Christopher Thomas Knight. He was a young man who fled society to live in an unheated nylon tent, surviving winter temperatures of 20 degrees below zero. His isolation was so absolute that when police finally arrested him in 2013 and asked how long he had been in the woods, he measured his time away by the last major news event he remembered. He hadn't taken medicine or had a conversation with another human being since the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The Swiss ghost Le Loyan was similarly human. It was merely a harmless individual wearing a mask to hide their face, taking daily walks through the forest for what they called happiness therapy. When the media published a photograph of them and turned them into a spectacle, they abandoned their walks and fled deeper into hiding. These stories reveal how uncomfortable society is with absolute recluses. We project terrifying, monstrous traits onto outsiders to justify our fear of those who reject societal norms. In dense urban environments, the myths adapt to the concrete. For decades, New York children feared Cropsey, a scarred, hook-handed boogeyman roaming Staten Island. Across the ocean, teenagers in England warned each other about Purple Aki, a mythical giant rumored to swallow kids whole. The true story behind Cropsey is devoid of hooks or scars. The legend stems from Andre Rand, a real-life kidnapper and killer who worked at the brutal Willowbrook State School for children with disabilities. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, children actually were vanishing around Staten Island. The community's boogeyman was a real person walking their streets. The English giant, Purple Aki, was also a real man named Akinwale Arabike. He traveled across the northwest of England, obsessively hunting down young men and teenagers to feel their muscles and force them to do squats. His compulsions led to severe consequences. In 1986, a 16-year-old boy named Gary Keller was terrified by Arabiki's pursuit, ran onto the train tracks at New Brighton Station to escape, and was accidentally electrocuted. The reality of human predators is deeply unsettling. Society invents cartoonish details, like a hook for a hand or the ability to swallow people whole, to make the true threat easier to process and explain to children. To see the exact chronological mechanics of how a true story mutates into a monster, we have to look at the famous Virginia Bunnyman legend. The myth begins with a completely mundane historical record. In 1970, a couple parked near a bridge filed a police report stating a man in light-colored clothing yelled at them for trespassing and threw a hatchet at their car. This timeline visualizes how the story distorts. As the account passed from person to person, the light-colored clothing mutated into a giant bunny suit. The hatchet became an axe. Eventually, the grumpy resident transformed into an escaped asylum patient stringing teenagers from a bridge. A single frightening encounter birthed an entire cultural phenomenon, complete with horror movies and merchandise. It shows exactly how quickly and drastically facts work as they travel through time. Myths and folklore act as a community's psychological processing tool. They are the defense mechanisms we build to make sense of contaminated water, extreme isolation, and horrific human tragedies. The next time you hear an impossible urban legend, don't ask if it's real. Instead, ask what real-world truth the story is trying to hide.